Zoe Williamson stared at her reflection in the bus window as tall buildings passed by. Her dark brown fingers smoothed down the front of her navy blue blazer one more time. The resume folder in her lap contained years of hard work, perfect grades, research awards, and a groundbreaking thesis in quantum engineering. Today was supposed to be her day. Next stop, Horizon Aerospace Technologies, announced the automated bus voice. Zoe took a deep breath. Her father, Daryl, had worked at Horizon for 23 years as head of the maintenance staff. She had grown up hearing stories about the amazing technology being developed there. Now, with her fresh degree, she was ready to join as an engineer, rather than just visiting her dad for lunch. The Horizon building stretched toward the sky like a silver needle. Zoe walked through the main entrance, her identification already cleared as a family member of staff. The lobby bustled with people in suits and lab coats. A massive holographic display showed the company's pride, the Starbridge Initiative, humanity's first attempt at faster-than-light travel technology. "Good morning. I have an interview with Mr. Powell in Human Resources," Zoe told the receptionist. "Zoe Williamson?" "Yes. Floor 32. The elevator will take you directly." The elevator ride gave Zoe time to review her mental notes. Her thesis on quantum calibration techniques had won university honors. Surely Horizon would see her potential. Stanley Powell did not stand when Zoe entered his office. He was a thin man with rectangular glasses who barely looked up from his tablet. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing vaguely at the chair across from his desk. Zoe sat down, back straight, smile ready. "Thank you for this opportunity, sir. I'm very excited about—" "Let's see," Powell interrupted, finally looking at her. His eyes widened slightly before narrowing again. "Williamson, any relation to our maintenance staff?" "Yes, my father is Daryl Williamson, the head janitor," Zoe said proudly. Her father had worked his way up from cleaning floors to managing the entire maintenance department. Something changed in Powell's expression. "I see." He glanced at her resume for less than 5 seconds. "Very impressive academic record, but I'm afraid we're looking for candidates with more practical experience for our engineering positions. But my thesis work relates directly to energy conversion problems. I developed a new approach to quantum calibration that could—" Yes, Powell said, standing up. "We'll keep your application on file. Thank you for coming in." The interview had lasted less than 3 minutes. Zoe sat frozen in her chair. "That's all?" she asked. "We have many applicants to see today," Powell said, already opening the door. "Human Resources will be in touch if there's interest." Zoe walked out in a daze. She had prepared for weeks for this interview. The rejection felt hollow, as if Powell had decided before she even walked in. In the hallway, she took a moment to compose herself before heading to the elevator. As she waited, voices drifted from a nearby conference room with the door slightly ajar. "The board won't wait forever, Patricia. This energy conversion problem is killing us. The Starbridge prototype is burning through money faster than it's burning through fuel." The male voice sounded angry. "I'm aware of our timeline, Gregory." A woman's voice, sharp and tired. "But your team has had 6 months and 3 budget extensions. The quantum matrices are unstable. We can't solve it with brute force approaches." Zoe's scientific curiosity overcame her disappointment. She edged closer to the door. "Galacticorp already has an offer ready when we fail," the woman continued. "I won't let them take this company apart after everything we've built. Patricia, with all due respect, we need a miracle. The laws of physics aren't cooperating." Zoe nearly gasped out loud. They were describing exactly the problem her thesis had addressed: quantum instability in high-energy conversion systems. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, but Zoe hesitated. Should she try to speak to these executives? Would they even listen after her rejection? The door to the conference room swung open fully, and Zoe found herself face to face with a tall woman in an expensive gray suit. Her hair was pulled back tightly and stress lines marked her face. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her tone making it clear Zoe didn't belong in this hallway. I just had an interview," Zoe stammered, backing toward the elevator. "Sorry to disturb you." The woman, Patricia Blackwell according to her name badge, gave Zoe a brief nod before turning back to her colleague. Zoe slipped into the elevator, her mind racing with what she had overheard. Later that evening, Zoe sat at the small kitchen table in the apartment she shared with her father. Daryl Williamson listened carefully as she described her interview and what she had overheard afterward. 3 minutes, Daryl said, shaking his head. Didn't even look at your work. It's fine, Dad, Zoe said, though it clearly wasn't. There are other companies. Daryl took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. I've cleaned Powell's office for 5 years. Man has 3 pictures of himself with celebrities and not one of family. I'm not surprised he didn't give you a fair chance. I could solve their problem, Dad. My thesis was specifically about stabilizing quantum matrices during energy conversion. Daryl reached across the table and patted her hand. I believe you, baby girl. But they'll never know because some HR guy couldn't see past. She didn't finish the sentence. Past what? That you're young? That you're a woman? That you're black? That you're the janitor's daughter? Daryl raised an eyebrow. People see what they expect to see. Always been that way. Zoe pushed her plate away, appetite gone. 23 years you've worked there. Don't they respect that? Daryl laughed softly. They don't see me, Zoe. That's the blessing and curse of maintenance work. We're invisible until something breaks. He paused, a thoughtful look crossing his face. But that means we see everything. What do you mean? I've watched that company from every angle, been in every room, behind every wall, under every floor. Sometimes the most important views of a problem come from those they never think to ask. Daryl tapped his temple. 23 years of watching how things really work. Zoe considered this. Her father had access to the entire building, labs, offices, even restricted areas that needed cleaning and maintenance. Dad, I have an idea, but I'll need your help. For you? Anything, Daryl said, a sparkle returning to his tired eyes. What's the plan? Joey from your team is still out sick, right? You said you were short-handed this week. Zoe leaned forward, excitement building. What if I helped you tomorrow night, just to cover until Joey's back? Daryl narrowed his eyes suspiciously. And why would my brilliant engineer daughter want to clean offices at midnight? Zoe smiled for the first time since the failed interview. Because I need to see their Starbridge project up close. I need to know if I'm right about their problem. That's restricted access, Zoe, even with my clearance. But they clean those areas, right? Someone has to vacuum the labs and empty the trash. Daryl sat back in his chair, considering. This could cost me my job. Or it could save the whole company, Zoe countered. Don't you always say that sometimes you have to create your own opportunity? A slow smile spread across Daryl's face. I did raise you to be resourceful, didn't I? So you'll help me? Daryl sighed deeply, but Zoe could see he'd already decided. One night, we stay together. If I say we leave, we leave. Deal? Zoe reached across the table and squeezed her father's hand. Deal. As she helped clear the dishes, Zoe's mind was already racing with possibilities. Tomorrow night, she would get her chance to see what Horizon Aerospace was missing, and maybe, just maybe, show them what the janitor's daughter could really do. The maintenance uniform was a bit too large for Zoe. She rolled up the sleeves as she followed her father through the quiet, dimly lit hallways of Horizon Aerospace. It was just past midnight, and the building felt like a different world compared to the busy daytime hours. Remember, if anyone asks, you are just helping me until Joey gets back, Daryl reminded her, pushing a cleaning cart loaded with supplies. Most security guards know me, but they might question you. Got it, Zoe said, trying to act natural. Her heart raced with both nervousness and excitement. They started on the lower floors, cleaning offices and hallways. Zoe followed her father's efficient routine, amazed at how methodical he was. No wasted movements, no overlooked spaces. You've really got this down to a science, she commented as they moved to another floor. Daryl smiled. 23 years of practice. When you clean the same building long enough, you find the most efficient paths. It's like solving a puzzle every night. After 2 hours of regular cleaning duties, they finally reached the research floors. The lab spaces were mostly glass-walled, allowing them to see the complex equipment inside even before entering. Floor 65, Daryl announced quietly. Starbridge Development Labs. Highest clearance area we clean. Zoe tried to keep her composure, but seeing the lab she had dreamed of working in made her pulse quicken. Daryl swiped his maintenance badge at the entrance and the door slid open with a soft hiss. We have 30 minutes allocated for this floor, he said. Basic cleaning only, no touching equipment. Zoe nodded, but her eyes were already scanning everything. The main lab contained what must be components of the Starbridge prototype. A massive circular structure with various instruments and energy conduits attached to it. As they cleaned, Zoe casually made her way toward one of the computer terminals that had been left on. A screensaver bounced around its display. Zoe, her father warned softly. Just cleaning. I know, Dad, she whispered back. But look, they left their systems on. That's against security protocol, right? Maybe we should report it. Daryl gave her a look that said he wasn't fooled, but he continued cleaning nearby, keeping watch at the door. Zoe moved a cleaning cloth over the desk, and as if by accident, her hand brushed the mouse. The screensaver disappeared, revealing technical diagrams of energy flow matrices, exactly what she had heard the executives discussing. She quickly scanned the information on screen. The quantum calibration approach they were using was fundamentally flawed. They were trying to force stability through redundant systems rather than addressing the quantum uncertainty at its core. Dad, she whispered excitedly. I was right. They're approaching it all wrong. 2 more minutes, then we move on. Daryl replied, but she could see he was proud of her understanding. When they finished the floor, instead of heading to the next area, Daryl led her to a small, unmarked room. Maintenance break room, he explained, unlocking it. Security cameras don't monitor in here, privacy laws. Inside was a simple table, chairs, a refrigerator, and surprisingly, a decent computer terminal. For logging maintenance reports and ordering supplies, Daryl explained, seeing her questioning look. Got 15 minutes before we need to hit the next section. Zoe sat down immediately. That's all I need. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she logged into the public research database using her university credentials. She downloaded several of her thesis papers and supporting research, then saved them to a secure folder she created on the Horizon system, labeled Maintenance Efficiency Models, with her father's ID. While Daryl ate a sandwich from his lunch, Zoe quickly created a basic simulation using the parameter values she had glimpsed from the Starbridge data. Her model confirmed her suspicions. Their approach would never achieve stability. Time's up, Daryl said, packing away his food. Just 1 more minute, Zoe pleaded, fingers still typing. No negotiating. Safety first. We can come back tomorrow. Reluctantly, Zoe saved her work and logged out. They resumed their cleaning rounds, finishing the shift just before dawn. For the next 3 nights, Zoe continued helping her father while spending break times working on her solution. She created a complete alternative approach to the quantum calibration problem, using principles she had developed in her thesis, but extending them further. On the 4th night, as they cleaned the executive floor, Zoe noticed the light was still on in one office. Through the glass door, she could see Patricia Blackwell, the CEO herself, sitting at her desk surrounded by holographic displays showing declining stock values and project timelines. She works later than anyone, Daryl whispered. Never leaves. Before 2 a.m. Zoe watched the CEO rub her temples in frustration. The woman looked exhausted with dark circles under her eyes. On her desk was a framed photo of what appeared to be a younger Patricia, standing next to the company's founder. Let's skip this office for tonight, Daryl suggested. Come back later when she's gone. But as they turned to move on, there was a crash from inside the office. They looked back to see Patricia standing over a broken coffee mug, coffee spreading across the floor. Without thinking, Daryl knocked on the door. Need help with that, Ms. Blackwell? The CEO looked up, startled. Oh, Daryl, isn't it? Yes, thank you. Clumsy of me. They entered the office, and Zoe immediately began cleaning up the spill while her father got fresh cleaning supplies from their cart. I don't recognize your assistant, Patricia said, watching Zoe work. My daughter, Zoe. Helping out while Joey's sick, Daryl explained. Patricia nodded, then returned to her desk. She didn't ask further questions, but Zoe could feel the CEO's eyes following her as she worked. As Zoe finished cleaning, she caught a glimpse of the prototype schematics on one of Patricia's holographic displays. The simulation showed the exact failure point Zoe had identified in her own work. Energy conversion. Matrix failure, Zoe said before she could stop herself. It's collapsing because you're trying to force quantum alignment. Patricia stared at her. Excuse me? Daryl froze, a look of alarm on his face. Zoe swallowed hard but decided she had nothing to lose. The Starbridge project. Your engineers are trying to solve the quantum instability with brute computational force. But that approach can't work because the uncertainty is fundamental to the system. The CEO's eyes narrowed. How do you know about the Starbridge project details? I'm not just a janitor's daughter, Zoe said, standing straighter. I have a doctorate in quantum engineering. I interviewed here last week, but Mr. Powell wasn't interested in my experience. Zoe, her father warned. But Patricia raised her hand for silence, studying Zoe with new interest. Go on. The solution isn't in fighting quantum uncertainty. It's in working with it. Creating adaptive matrices that flow with the quantum fluctuations rather than trying to eliminate them. Zoe took a deep breath. I've developed an approach that could solve your problem. And why should I believe you can? Solve what my top engineers cannot? Patricia asked, though her tone had shifted from dismissive to curious. Because sometimes fresh perspectives see what experts miss, Zoe replied. I'd be happy to show you my work. I've already created simulations using public research parameters. Patricia looked from Zoe to Daryl and back again. The silence stretched, uncomfortably. Finally, the CEO sighed and gestured to a chair. You have 5 minutes to convince me before I call security. Zoe sat down across from Patricia Blackwell, trying to keep her hands from shaking. This was her chance, perhaps her only chance, to show what she could do. Daryl stood nervously by the door, cleaning supplies still in hand. 5 minutes, Patricia repeated, checking her watch. Go. Zoe took a deep breath. May I? She asked, gesturing to the computer terminal on Patricia's desk. The CEO hesitated, then nodded, turning the screen toward Zoe. Your current approach treats quantum uncertainty as an enemy to be controlled, Zoe began, quickly logging into the folder where she had stored her work. But what if we treat it as a feature, not a bug? She pulled up her simulation models, showing colorful energy flow diagrams alongside mathematical equations. Traditional quantum calibration tries to force particles into predictable states, Zoe continued, pointing to the screen. But my approach creates adaptive matrices that respond to quantum fluctuations in real time. Patricia leaned forward, her tired eyes focusing on the display. This looks similar to Dr. Carter's adaptive systems theory. It builds on his work, Zoe agreed, surprised by the CEO's technical knowledge. But Dr. Carter was thinking too linearly. Quantum systems aren't just four-dimensional. They exist in multiple probability states simultaneously. Zoe pulled up another diagram, this one showing a spiraling energy pattern with multiple branch points. This is my solution. Instead of fighting entropy, we create a system that actively harvests the energy from quantum state changes. She touched the screen, and the simulation began to run, showing energy flowing through the system with increasing efficiency. Patricia watched in silence, her expression unreadable. Your 5 minutes are up, she said finally. Zoe's heart sank. She had failed to convince her. But instead of calling security, Patricia reached for her phone. Gregory, I need you in my office now. She hung up without waiting for a response. Your name again? Patricia asked. Zoe Williamson, the daughter of... She looked at Daryl. Yes, ma'am, Daryl said, standing a little straighter. My daughter. Patricia nodded slowly. And you interviewed here last week? With Mr. Powell in HR, Zoe confirmed. It was very brief. Patricia's mouth tightened. I see. The office door opened, and a disheveled man in his 50s entered. He wore rumpled clothes that suggested he'd been working late too. He looked annoyed until he saw Patricia, then quickly composed himself. "You wanted to see me?" he asked. "Gregory, this is Zoe Williamson," Patricia said. "She has an interesting solution to our energy conversion problem." Gregory Hayes, the engineering director, according to his badge, looked at Zoe with confusion, taking in her maintenance uniform. "I'm sorry, who is this?" he asked. "Dr. Williamson has a PhD in quantum engineering, and she's been kind enough to point out a fundamental flaw in our approach to the Starbridge project," Patricia said, her voice carrying a subtle edge. "She believes she has a solution." Gregory looked from Patricia to Zoe, disbelief clear on his face. "With all due respect, Patricia, we have the best minds in the industry working on this problem. How could she possibly—" "Show him," Patricia interrupted, gesturing to the computer. Zoe repeated her explanation, this time going deeper into the technical details. She could see Gregory's expression shifting from dismissive to surprised, then reluctantly interested. "This is unorthodox," he admitted when she finished. "But it violates several established principles of quantum mechanics. Only the simplified models used in practical engineering," Zoe countered. "The theoretical framework actually supports this approach completely. The mathematics is sound." Gregory ran his hand through his thinning hair. "Even if the theory holds, implementing this would require completely redesigning our prototype. We'd need to start from scratch with only 2 weeks before the board deadline." "Not necessarily," Zoe said. "The hardware can remain mostly intact. It's the control systems and calibration algorithms that need changing." She pulled up another diagram. "Here's how the retrofit would work." As they discussed technical details, Daryl quietly continued cleaning the office, pride evident in his eyes as he watched his daughter hold her own with the company executives. After 20 minutes of intense discussion, Gregory reluctantly nodded. "It's possible. Theoretical, but possible." "How quickly could your team implement this approach?" Patricia asked him. Gregory hesitated. "With our current resources, maybe 3 weeks, but the board meeting is in 2. "What if I helped?" Zoe suggested. "I've already done most of the theoretical work and preliminary simulations." Patricia and Gregory exchanged looks. "She doesn't have clearance," Gregory pointed out. "I can fix that," Patricia replied. She turned to Zoe. "Would you be willing to sign a non-disclosure agreement tonight and start working on this immediately, as a paid consultant?" Zoe couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Yes, absolutely." "Good." Patricia turned to Daryl. "Mr. Williamson, I apologize, but I'm going to need to steal your assistant for the rest of the night, and possibly the next 2 weeks." Daryl smiled. "She's her own woman, Ms. Blackwell, but if you're asking my permission to give my daughter a chance to show what she can do, you have it. That's settled then." Patricia stood up. "Gregory, assemble your core team in the main conference room in 30 minutes. I don't care if they're at home in bed, get them here." Gregory nodded stiffly and left the office, casting one last uncertain look at Zoe. When he was gone, Patricia turned to Zoe. "Before we proceed, I need to know something. Why didn't you just apply to another company after Powell rejected you? Why clean floors to get access to our labs?" Zoe thought for a moment. "2 reasons. First, because the problem you're trying to solve is fascinating and I knew I could help." She glanced at her father. "And second, because my dad has given 23 years to this company, keeping it running from the shadows. If Horizon fails, so does his legacy." Patricia studied her, then slowly nodded. Loyalty, not a quality our HR department apparently screens for. She gathered some papers from her desk. "Well, Dr. Williamson, shall we go save my company?" Daryl watched as his daughter followed the CEO out of the office, her maintenance uniform incongruous against Patricia's tailored suit. He shook his head in amazement, then returned to his cleaning cart. There were still floors to finish before dawn. The next 2 days passed in a blur for Zoe. She worked around the clock with Gregory's engineering team, explaining her approach and helping implement the changes to the Starbridge control systems. At first, the team was skeptical, even hostile. But as the simulation showed increasingly promising results, their attitude began to change. By the end of the second day, they had a working prototype of the new control algorithm. The test was scheduled for the following morning, with Patricia and several board members planning to attend. That night, Zoe finally went home to shower and change clothes. Daryl was waiting for her, having just returned from his shift. "Big day tomorrow?" he asked as she collapsed on the couch. "The biggest," Zoe confirmed. "If the test works, the company is saved. If it fails..." She didn't finish the sentence. "It won't fail," Daryl said confidently. "Not with my girl running things." Zoe smiled tiredly. "I'm not running things, Dad. I'm just the consultant they didn't want until they got desperate. For now," Daryl agreed. "But tomorrow? Who knows?" As Zoe drifted off to sleep, she wondered if he was right. Tomorrow could change everything, not just for Horizon Aerospace, but for her future as well. The test lab was packed with people the next morning. Board members in expensive suits stood behind a safety barrier, whispering among themselves. Engineers ran final checks on equipment. Security guards stood at the doors, keeping curious employees from entering. Zoe stood next to the central control panel, reviewing the test sequence one last time. She wore clothes Patricia had arranged for her, a Horizon Aerospace lab coat over a simple blouse and slacks. She felt like an imposter, despite the ID badge clipped to her pocket that read, "Dr. Zoe Williamson, Special Consultant." Gregory Hayes approached her, coffee in hand. His attitude had improved slightly over the past 2 days, but wariness still showed in his eyes. "Final checks are complete," he said. "If your theory is correct, we should see a 40% improvement in stability. Closer to 60%, Zoe corrected, earning a raised eyebrow from Gregory. Patricia Blackwell entered the lab, flanked by 2 serious-looking men in dark suits. She nodded to Zoe, then addressed the gathered crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on such short notice. As you know, our Starbridge initiative has faced significant challenges in the energy conversion phase. Today, we're testing a new approach developed by Dr. Zoe Williamson." Several board members looked at Zoe with surprise, clearly wondering where this unknown scientist had come from. "If successful," Patricia continued, "this test will demonstrate that our timeline remains achievable and additional funding is justified. If unsuccessful..." She let the sentence hang. Everyone knew what failure would mean. Patricia nodded to Zoe. "Dr. Williamson, when you're ready." Zoe took a deep breath and turned to the control panel. This was the moment her career, and possibly the future of human space travel, would be decided. She pressed the sequence of buttons that would initiate the test. "Beginning energy conversion sequence," she announced. Phase 1 powering up, the Starbridge prototype, a ring-shaped device 10 feet in diameter mounted in the center of the lab, began to hum as power flowed through its systems. Holographic displays around the room showed energy levels rising. "Phase 1 complete," Zoe said. Moving to Phase 2, initiating quantum calibration. This was the critical moment. Under the old system, this was where instabilities would begin to appear, but as the power levels continued to rise, the displays showed steady, controlled energy flow. "Amazing," Gregory murmured beside her. "The matrices are adapting exactly as you predicted." "Phase 2, complete," Zoe announced, unable to keep a smile from her face. "Phase 3, maximum power." The hum from the prototype grew louder. The ring began to glow with a blue-white light, casting shadows around the lab. Energy readings climbed higher than ever before achieved. "Quantum stability at 97%, called out one of the engineers monitoring the systems. 98%, holding steady at 98.3%. A murmur ran through the assembled crowd. The board members leaned forward, eyes wide. "Previous best was 58%, Gregory said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is unprecedented." "Preparing for controlled shutdown," Zoe said. 3, 2, 1. She pressed the final sequence and the prototype powered down smoothly. For a moment, the lab was totally silent. Then applause broke out, tentative at first, then growing stronger. Patricia stepped forward, her face showing relief and genuine pleasure. "Congratulations, Dr. Williamson. It seems your theory has been proven correct." One of the board members, an older man with silver hair, approached them. "A 40% improvement would have been impressive, Ms. Blackwell. But this, almost 70% better than our previous best. I think the board will be satisfied." "Thank you, Mr. Keller," Patricia said. "May I formally introduce Dr. Zoe Williamson, the quantum engineer who developed this breakthrough?" Mr. Keller shook Zoe's hand. "Excellent work, young lady. Which university did you say you were from?" "She's not from a university, Richard," Patricia said smoothly. "Dr. Williamson is a new addition to our team." The board members began to file out, talking excitedly among themselves. The engineers gathered around the control panel, reviewing the test data with animated gestures. Patricia drew Zoe to one side. "The board meeting is tomorrow morning. With these results, Galacticorp's takeover attempt is dead in the water. You've saved Horizon, Dr. Williamson." Zoe blinked, still processing what had happened. "Thank you for giving me the chance to prove myself." "No, thank you," Patricia replied, "though I'm still curious how you ended up cleaning my office floor instead of working in a lab somewhere." Before Zoe could answer, the lab doors opened and Daryl Williamson entered. He was still in his maintenance uniform, having just finished his night shift. When he saw Zoe in her lab coat surrounded by engineers, a proud smile spread across his face. "Dad," Zoe called, waving him over. Patricia looked between them. "Ah, now I understand." She extended her hand to Daryl. "Mr. Williamson, your daughter has just made history at Horizon." Daryl shook her hand, standing tall. "She's been making history since she was little, Miss Blackwell. Just took the right people to notice." Later that afternoon, Patricia called Zoe to her office. Gregory Hayes was already there, looking uncomfortable. "Please sit down, Dr. Williamson," Patricia said, gesturing to a chair. "We have some matters to discuss." Zoe sat, suddenly nervous. Despite the test's success, she was still only a consultant. Had they gotten what they needed from her? "First," Patricia said, "I've reviewed your interview with Mr. Powell." Stanley Powell himself stood in the corner of the office, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "It seems," Patricia continued, "that your interview lasted exactly 2 minutes and 47 seconds, during which time Mr. Powell asked 0 questions about your qualifications." Powell cleared his throat. "Ms. Blackwell, as I explained—" "You explained nothing useful, Stanley," Patricia cut him off. She turned back to Zoe. "I've also discovered that yours wasn't an isolated case. Mr. Powell has a pattern of dismissing qualified candidates based on factors unrelated to their abilities." "It's not personal," Powell protested weakly. "I just didn't think she'd fit our culture." "Our culture," Patricia repeated coldly. "Our culture nearly cost us the most important project in this company's history." She handed Powell a folder. "You'll find your separation agreement in here. Security will escort you to clean out your desk." Powell took the folder with shaking hands and left without another word. Patricia turned to Gregory. "As for you, Gregory, I believe you owe Dr. Williamson an apology." Gregory shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, well, I was skeptical, but the results speak for themselves." He looked at Zoe. "You proved me wrong, Dr. Williamson. It won't be the last time a younger scientist shows me something new, I'm sure." Zoe nodded, accepting his words. "Science advances when we challenge established thinking." "Indeed," Patricia said. "Which brings me to my final point." She slid a document across the desk to Zoe. "This is a job offer. Director of Quantum Applications, a new division I'm creating, reporting directly to me." Zoe stared at the paper, seeing the salary figure, nearly 10 times what her father made after 23 years. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "Say yes," Gregory suggested. "I, for one, would be honored to work with you." Zoe looked up at Patricia. "On one condition." "You're already negotiating," Patricia said with amusement. "What's your condition?" My father gets a promotion too. Head of Facilities Operations with a proper office and a raise. Patricia smiled. Already done, I spoke with him this morning. Zoe picked up the pen and signed the contract, her hand steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. From rejected applicant to director in 1 week, her life had changed completely. Welcome to Horizon, Dr. Williamson, Patricia said. Officially this time. 6 months passed quickly. Zoe's office on the 68th floor had a view of the city skyline that still amazed her every morning. Her team had grown to 15 engineers, all working to apply her quantum calibration techniques to various aspects of the Starbridge project. Today was special. The first full-scale test of the completed Starbridge prototype. The press had been invited and government officials would be attending. Zoe checked her appearance one last time in the reflection of her office window. The Blue Horizon executive suit felt strange compared to the lab coats she preferred, but Patricia had insisted everyone look their best today. A knock at her door made her turn. Daryl stood there, also dressed in a suit rather than his usual maintenance uniform. Look at us, he said, smiling. All dressed up. Dad, Zoe hugged him. I was just coming to find you. Are you ready for the big event? Daryl nodded. My team finished preparing the observation deck an hour ago. Everything looks great. Zoe smiled at the pride in his voice when he said, my team. As head of facilities operations, Daryl now managed all building maintenance and had his own staff, of 30. His office, while not as large as Zoe's, had the same impressive view. Patricia asked me to bring you down, Daryl said. The press is already setting up and she wants the core team for a briefing before the demonstration. They took the elevator to the ground floor testing facility, a massive hangar-like space that had been built specifically for the Starbridge. The prototype gleamed under bright lights, a 30-foot ring of shining metal and glowing energy conduits, surrounded by control stations and monitoring equipment. Patricia Blackwell was speaking with a group of officials when she spotted Zoe and Daryl. She excused herself and walked over to them. There you are, she said. Our star scientist and our facilities mastermind. Zoe still wasn't used to such praise from the CEO. Everything looks amazing, she said. The team has done incredible work. Your team, Patricia corrected. Your leadership made this possible. She turned to a nearby aide. Is everything ready for the press conference? Yes, ma'am. Reporters are seated. Officials are in the VIP section. We're ready when you are. Patricia nodded. Zoe, you'll be with me at the podium. Daryl, there's a seat for you in the front row. Me? Daryl looked surprised. I'm not part of the technical team. Without you, there would be no Starbridge, Patricia said firmly. Horizons recognizes contributions at all levels now. The press conference began with Patricia introducing the project to the assembled reporters and dignitaries. Screens around the hangar showed stock prices rising as she spoke about the commercial applications of the technology. The Starbridge represents a fundamental breakthrough in energy conversion, Patricia explained. While its immediate application is for transportation, the underlying technology will revolutionize power generation, manufacturing, and countless other fields. She gestured to Zoe. To explain the science behind the Starbridge, I'm pleased to introduce our Director of Quantum Applications, Dr. Zoe Williamson. Zoe stepped to the microphone, momentarily overwhelmed by the sea of faces. She spotted her father in the front row, giving her an encouraging nod. Thank you, Ms. Blackwell, Zoe began. 6 months ago, the Starbridge was considered technically impossible by most experts. The quantum instabilities in the energy conversion process were thought to be unsolvable. She explained her approach in simple terms that the non-scientists could understand, emphasizing the paradigm shift from fighting quantum uncertainty to working with it. Today we'll demonstrate the first stable energy conversion at full power, she concluded. This test represents the final milestone before the Starbridge moves from prototype to production. Gregory Hayes, now one of Zoe's strongest supporters, took over to explain the technical parameters of the test. Meanwhile, Zoe returned to her position beside Patricia. You've become quite the public speaker, Patricia murmured. I learned from watching you, Zoe replied. The demonstration began with the prototype powering up section by section. The distinctive hum filled the hangar as energy levels rose steadily. The assembled crowd watched in silence as the ring began to glow, first blue, then shifting through the spectrum to a brilliant white. Quantum matrices stable at 99.6%, announced the test engineer. All systems nominal. A cheer went up from the Horizon team. Even some of the reporters applauded. Beginning phase transition, the engineer continued. The center of the ring began to shimmer, the air seeming to fold in upon itself. A perfectly circular opening appeared, a window into somewhere else. Transition complete, bridge established. The room erupted in applause and excited chatter. Cameras flashed as reporters tried to capture the historic moment. Patricia stepped back to the microphone. What you're seeing is a stable bridge between 2 points in space, she explained over the noise. This test connects 2 parts of this facility, separated by only 100 meters. But the technology can be scaled to connect any 2 points, on Earth, or beyond. The questions from reporters came rapid fire after that. How far could the bridge extend? Was it safe for human transit? When would commercial applications be available? As Patricia fielded the questions, Zoe found herself looking at her father. Daryl caught her eye and mouthed the words, "You did it." His face showed pure pride, without a hint of the bitterness he could have felt after decades of being overlooked by the company. After the press conference, while engineers conducted additional tests for the officials, Zoe and Daryl found a quiet corner of the facility. I never imagined this, Zoe admitted. 6 months ago, I couldn't even get past a job interview, Daryl chuckled. Life changes fast sometimes. One moment you're mopping floors, the next you're changing the world. We're changing it together, Zoe insisted. Your wisdom guided me, Dad. Your access made my opportunity possible. Maybe, Daryl said. But you had the knowledge and the courage to speak up when it mattered. Patricia joined them, looking pleased with the day's events. The board is ecstatic. Stock is up 43% already. And Galacticorp? Zoe asked. Their takeover bid is a distant memory, Patricia said with satisfaction. Though they've already tried to recruit you 3 times, according to HR. Zoe laughed. No amount of money could lure me away now. Good, Patricia said, because there's more work to do. She handed Zoe a tablet showing plans for an expanded Starbridge network. Phase 2 funding was approved this morning. We're building 6 more bridges. As they discussed the future plans, a young woman in a maintenance uniform passed by, pushing a cleaning cart. She glanced at Zoe with a curious expression, clearly wondering how someone who looked like her had reached such a prominent position. Zoe paused mid-sentence and smiled at the young woman. Excuse me, she called. What's your name? Maya Garcia, the woman replied, surprised to be addressed by executives. Maya, are you interested in engineering by any chance? Zoe asked. Yes. I'm taking night classes at the community college, Maya said hesitantly. Engineering physics. Zoe exchanged looks with Patricia, who nodded with understanding. When you finish your shift, come to my office, Zoe said, handing Maya her card. I'd like to hear about your studies. We might have an internship that would interest you. As Maya continued on her way, visibly stunned, Daryl squeezed his daughter's shoulder. Full circle, he said softly. Zoe nodded. Just the beginning of the circle, she corrected, watching as the Starbridge continued to glow, a brilliant doorway to the future they were building together.